Are you ready to be heard? And I mean really ready. Ready to be heard for your ideas, for your thoughts, for the initiatives, for the things that you want to bring to the table and put forward in the world. Are you ready? And I'm asking if you're ready because if your answer is yes, that you're ready to step out into the light and to be heard and be seen, then the next logical question is, are you ready to do the work? Because it does take work. Learning how to use our voice with power and with intention, to use it as one of our key leadership tools, it's going to take some work because there's a few things we have to do to roll back years of habits and patterns that are not serving us right now. So thank you for joining me tonight. It is Training Tuesday, and tonight we're talking about the power of speech, and are you ready to be heard? So if you're joining me live, hello, welcome. I welcome your comments and say hello in the chat. As you guys know, I don't always see the comments, but I try to. But it's great to know that you guys are here tonight. So a lot of times when we think about, I'm just going to dive right in. A lot of times when we think about communicating with power or how we're not heard at work, we often put that up to, I work in a work environment that, isn't very friendly towards me or isn't very friendly towards women. I work in a male-dominated work environment, so they're always interrupting me and stepping on me verbally, and that may all be true. It may absolutely all be true. I've worked in those environments. I get it. However, there is a part of communication and communicating with power for women where we are our own enemy. We are putting the obstacles in our own way. Those are the pieces that we can control. And those are the pieces I want to talk to you about tonight. So we may not be able to control the men in the room and how they react or respond or interrupt or step on us verbally. We may not be able to control the culture of the work environment we're in. But that doesn't mean we can't still speak up with power, with intention, with leadership, and present our ideas and our thoughts in a way that's heard. And it's far less easy then for whoever else is in the room to interrupt us or to step on us or to dismiss us. So for me, this became a truly pivotal moment in my career at a point when I was in one of my early leadership roles. I was in one of my early executive positions. And so those of you who joined me, and I don't know if you're here tonight, but if you joined me last week in the 5-day challenge, you've heard this story. And I've also told the story on a couple of my master classes. But that's how important this story is to me, that I keep telling it. This shifted for me significantly how I started to approach my career and how I was showing up as a leader. And so just really quickly, I had come to an executive team meeting. We had them every 2 weeks. I was the only woman. So it was me and it was 5 men in a room every 2 weeks talking about the business and how we were leading the business and where we were going. And I was running marketing, all of that. I came to that meeting with an idea that I thought was a really big idea that would break us into a new market, shift the direction of the company in a way that I thought was good for us and very powerful. Came into the meeting, sat down, went through the agenda items, and I had said, by the way, I've been thinking about something here, and I'm wondering what you guys think about, and I pitched my idea. To which all of them sort of went, yeah, no, I don't know. That doesn't really seem like that's a good fit for us right now. And that was it. It was just, the idea was dismissed. There was no further discussion. There was no inquiry on what I thought or why I thought we should go down this road. It was just Natalie, I don't think it's really aligned with us. And we were done. I walked out of that meeting with 2 very conflicting emotions. One being, I was actually really mad. I was mad that we didn't get a further discussion. I was mad that somehow there was no merit to what I was bringing to the table. And then the second emotion was I was not mad, but upset with myself, thinking, I must have missed something. If they all just dismissed this so easily, there must be something I'm missing here. I'm not smart enough. I have to figure this out. So I wanted to both defend my idea and dismiss it at the same time myself because of the response that I got. And so I was not trusting myself as much as I could and should have been at that time. What ended up happening was about 4 months later, in the same biweekly team meeting, one of the other executives spoke up and said, listen, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and here's what I think we need to do. And he put out the same idea I had pitched 4 months ago. Same idea. And I had that Twilight Zone moment of looking around the room going, are they for real? Are they? Because they all jumped on it. Oh, that's a great idea. We need to get on that. We're going to do a task force, and this is going to have urgency. And suddenly we were all assigned things to do to go make this happen. And I was so bewildered, flummoxed. I was so surprised at the response to this that I sat in that meeting and I didn't say anything. I just kind of watched everybody's responses, and I walked away with my list of to-dos. And as the meeting went on and as I walked away, I got really mad. I got really mad because I thought, this was my idea. This was my idea 4 months ago. Now this guy is getting credit for it, and I had been dismissed, and I don't even know what just happened. Now, I had a strong enough relationship with every one of the men in that room to know that I was not summarily dismissed on a regular basis because I was not disrespected. They didn't think I was a dummy. It wasn't that. But I didn't know what it was that idea didn't get heard. And when this other gentleman spoke up, suddenly it was. And it was a good idea. So I went that very afternoon, because I was still really mad. I went to every single one of those executives and I just said, listen, so excited we're taking this to the next level. I think this is a fabulous idea, but I'm just curious. I brought this up 4 months ago and you said wasn't really in alignment with us, and we didn't even really talk about it. What's changed? Every single one of them, including the guy who pitched the idea, looked at me and said, you did? No recollection that I pitched that. One guy said, maybe I kind of remember you talking about that. I think you mentioned something about that. I had to walk away from that thinking, okay, what happened? Because unless this is some vast white male conspiracy of some kind, and again, I had a good enough relationship with these gentlemen that I was pretty sure that wasn't it. What was going on? And that led me to start thinking about, how did I present this idea? How did I pitch this idea that I got the, yeah, I don't know, Natalie, that doesn't sound right, versus what this other gentleman pitched and he got the, oh, we've got to go do that. So that led me down this path of exploring communication styles, communication differences between men and women, because I knew somehow it was me showing up differently. And as I started exploring kind of how we communicate and how we show up as leaders, I was finding there are differences in the way that men and women show up and how we communicate. So I came up, in my explorations and research, I've found over a dozen ways that we can step on our own toes when we are trying to communicate. I don't have time tonight to share a dozen ways, but I am going to talk about three ways that we can create our own verbal obstacles that I think are some of the most impactful. Now, if you were in the 5-day challenge last week, we covered, I think, all of them. I have a worksheet where I cover 8 of them, and then we talked about some of the other ones. Which was a fantastic challenge. So those of you who did show up, thank you for showing up, because that was fun and we dug a little bit deeper into this. But for tonight, I'm going to share 3. And the first one I want to share is the one that's probably the most common and possibly one of the easiest ones for us to adjust. And it's actually, I'm squishing 2 or 3 together in this one because they're related. The first verbal misfire, right? The first communication misfire that we women often step into when we're walking into a conversation. We do this at home, but we especially do this at work. Is a way that we show up where we show ourselves up as smaller, as less important, as uncertain. Now, when I say that, can you think of what phrases come to mind that we use that make us show up that way? Uncertain, smaller, unimportant. Because we practically say it. I'm sorry, but Do you have a minute? I just need a little bit of your time. Excuse me, but I just have a question. We use these qualifiers, right? We use these phrases like just, actually, I'm sorry, but. Do you have a little bit? And we step into them thinking this is a kinder, gentler way in which we're going to enter the conversation, that this is a softer way of leading into a question we have to ask or something that we need. But it doesn't have that effect. The impact isn't somebody thinking, oh, isn't she nice because she's sorry that she's asking me a question. The impression, the unconscious impression that it leaves is that we are sorry, small, unimportant people who are apologetic for taking up time and space. I just need a minute of your time. I'm so sorry. I just need a minute. Why are we apologizing? We think it's polite. We think it shows respect, but it doesn't. It's like I said, it sends that unconscious signal that we are not sure of what we're talking about. We're hesitant about asking what we need to ask or about stating what we need to state. It keeps us looking and feeling small. It keeps us feeling small. Just think about how you say that. I'm so sorry. I just need a minute of your time. How different is that from, hi, I need a minute? You can even ask the question, hi, do you have a minute? It's not really the minute piece. It's when we're couching it so much with, I just need a little bit. I just need. I'm sorry, but. Those are the killer words that are like anchors that drop us into smaller. Smaller, afraid, hesitant, uncertain. When we really could just state what it is we need. Hi, I need a minute of your time. Hi, I have a question. It's so easy when we think about it. The challenge is we don't often think about it because these verbal cues are such ingrained patterns in the way we speak. So ingrained. We throw them out before we've even processed what we're saying. It's just how we start a sentence. So that's one of the habits, right? The habitual patterns. And like I said, that's probably one of the easiest ones to break because those are very clear words that we can pull out and go, okay, not saying that anymore. I am not doing that anymore. So that's number one, right? These simple words and phrases that are almost habitual for us that we throw out there that actually leave the impression that we don't know what we're doing or what we're talking about, or we're not sure we should even be here. Number two is another verbal pattern that we have. It's a little bit different. It's not specific words. I call this word vomit, verbal vomit. It's our verbal vomit, which is great and entertaining and fun when we are in storytelling mode, especially with our girlfriends. It is not great, it is not fun, and it is in fact incredibly confusing if we are in presenting mode or information sharing mode. So when you are presenting an idea, the minute you start getting into, okay, so I have this idea and this is what I think, and it came up because I thought of this the other day. And do you remember that time 2 months ago in that meeting that we had when so-and-so said X, and then we went into that conversation? Well, that triggered for me this idea over here, and this is what I think we could do. We are wired, you guys have heard me talk about this before, with diffuse awareness. Diffuse awareness means we are aware of all things at all times, which is very different from most men who are wired with single focus. They focus on one thing at a time. Our diffuse awareness is part of our storytelling. So it's one thing when we're sharing a story with our friends and we're saying, oh my God, I ran into Jenny the other day. We were going downtown and we were going to that little market over there, and I walked by that window. Do you remember that store that had that awesome blue dress in the window? I never did go back and get that dress. I really regret that. Anyway, Jenny and I then were running downtown and we ran into Miranda and we went and got that bakery that's on the corner there. Okay, just right there. Think of all the little details and markers I just put in there about where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. Do we have any idea what the importance of that story was? None. What was the important thing to remember? That I was with Jenny, that we ran into Miranda, or that there was a bakery? Forget the blue dress, because I obviously missed that opportunity, right? We put in those markers because that's part of how we tell stories. It's not great for how we present. When we start getting wrapped into a story, when we're presenting an idea or an initiative, and we start falling into that pattern of leaving those markers, we confuse our audience, both men and women, but especially the men. Men, being single focused, are looking for what's important here. What do I need to focus on that's going to help me get to the next step? That's going to help me make a decision. That's going to help me understand what's expected of me afterwards. That's going to help me solve the problem. That's all they're looking for. When we put all of these kind of fake markers out there, they by the time they get to the blue dress and we ran into Miranda, they're like, I give up. I have no idea what I'm supposed to know. And they check out. So I call it verbal vomit when I'm thinking about how we communicate with our partners and our friends. In the work environment, I typically will call it more padding, right? We add extra detail to our stories. We add extra information that isn't really necessary for somebody to either get the point or make a decision, right? All this extra padding is our way of justifying that we did our research, that we know what we're talking about, that we consulted and collaborated with all the right people, right? We add all this extra stuff to it to justify just the idea, just the decision that needs to be made. But the challenge is that with all that justifying we're doing, we have lost the focus of our audience, because now they don't know if they're supposed to be focused on who we spoke with or the research that we did, or wait, there was a question in that? What was I supposed to answer there? So when we do the padding, when we do this meandering, right, on how we share ideas and stuff, we end up losing the focus, losing the point, and then we come across as not organized. We come across as mentally distracted, or she seems to have some good ideas, but she always gets it lost in all that stuff. Or we come across as just we talk too much. Again, these are perceptions. It doesn't mean that you talk too much. Anybody who knows me knows that I will tell stories all day long. I love telling stories. I love giving you all the details. I will try to very much limit that to my social conversations and with my girlfriends. The male mind can handle about 15 minutes of that verbal vomit, by the way, and then they're checked out. So if you find yourself in a meeting and in a room going down that road and you see the eyes glazing over, check yourself. How much information have you given them, and have you actually given them what they need to know, what they really need to know that's important in that moment? The third obstacle, the third kind of verbal misfire obstacle that we put in front of ourselves is when we pose the question instead of giving the answer. And we do this a lot when we are trying to not seem very pushy or not seem so assertive. We're trying to be gentler in putting our ideas forward. We will use this technique to feel more collaborative. And it can have that effect, but the main effect it has, one, is we become really well known for asking good questions, but not necessarily for giving great answers, because we're posing the question that leads to the obvious answer, but we're letting someone else step in and provide the answer, or claim that in that question where we provided the answer, they can claim it as a good idea, and therefore it's their idea and they get the credit. When we hedge, right, when we hedge in the way that we are posing a question, instead of simply delivering a declarative statement, we are opening the door for someone else to say, fabulous idea, here's what we're going to do. And suddenly they've just taken charge. We have let go of control of our ideas and our thoughts and our mission at that point. So all the goodness we were trying to generate by making it a question and being nicer and more collaborative and a little softer actually spins it all around and says she's a great team member, but she's not a leader. Because a leader will come in and say, I have this idea. One of the reasons we'll do this also is self-protection. If we ask it as a question instead of posing it as an idea, then if we're wrong, or if somebody says it's not a good idea, we've covered ourselves. Well, it was just an idea. Well, it was just a thought. This hedging is another way that we protect ourselves and we stay small. because there isn't a leader out there who every idea she has proposed has been a fabulous one, right? There's a certain amount of confidence that we have to step into this with, going, I'm going to propose this idea because I think it's a good idea. And if everybody shoots it down, I'll just come up with another one. We have to have that confidence to make those declarative statements instead of making it a question. So those were the three that I wanted to outline for you tonight that I think are some of our biggest roadblockers when it comes to our verbal communication. It's those simple little phrases that we throw in all the time that make us seem, that we think we're being polite, respectful, or soft, but actually make us seem very small and timid. And it's the, I'm sorry, but, well, actually, I just need a little bit, right? It's these little qualifiers. The second one was the meandering, the padding, the verbal vomit that we do that adds more to the story than actually needs to be there for us to get our point across. And the third is asking the question instead of just giving the answer. Posing a question instead of making a declarative statement. So, what do? What do we do to shift these verbal habits? All three of these are verbal habits and patterns that we've picked up since childhood, honestly. It's not that you're doing this because suddenly as an adult you decided you wanted to play small. It's because we've been trained to speak this way. This kind of speech and these speech patterns have been accepted and rewarded. But as you step into being a leader, they don't work for you anymore. So what do? First and foremost, especially with the first one, with the verbal miscues of those words that we can look for, the I'm sorries and the just a little bits. Find yourself an accountability partner. If there's somebody at work that you are in meetings with, even when they're Zoom meetings, right? If there's somebody at work that you're in a lot of meetings with, ask them to be your accountability partner. And it's very simple to say, hey, I am trying to improve the way I communicate at work. And I noticed I have this habit of always saying I'm sorry. Or I have this habit of always saying, excuse me, but I just need, like these little qualifiers. And they're not helping me. And I'd like you to give me the virtual kick under the table whenever you hear me in a meeting. Do that. And maybe it's a text message or an IM. Maybe they call you out on it in the spot, depending on how friendly that meeting or that environment is, or if you're talking to them one-on-one. But you get somebody who's in the game with you. Because if you're finding somebody who's an accountability partner, there may be something, either the same habit or a different one, that they want you to look out for them. Accountability partners are awesome because they're real in real time and they won't take your excuses. So find yourself an accountability partner. With the with phrases and words that show up more in your writing, like doing emails, because we use these same phrases in emails, and we meander in emails, by the way. We do the meandering, we do the hedging and the posing of questions, and we do those verbal misfires in our emails as well. My recommendation is that for 1 week minimum, every email you write before you hit send, rewrite it. Reread it and rewrite it and ask yourself, how many of these little qualifiers am I putting in here of I'm sorry or just a little bit or excuse me buts? How many questions am I asking when I really want to make a statement? How much extra information is in this email than what this person really needs to either understand the point or make a decision? Rewrite them. It will take extra time, but you want to retrain yourself to be in a habit of more clear and more direct communication without all the I'm sorries, without all the questions, and with a far more clear mission statement every time that you send an email. The third thing you can do is my favorite from a verbal communication standpoint, which is almost the same thing as editing and rewriting your emails, which is record yourself. Most of us have access to Zoom these days, so jump on Zoom and just hit the record button. And before you walk into a meeting to present an idea or a proposal or walk through a presentation, or if you know you're going into a meeting and you're not presenting, but you know there are a couple questions you want to ask, there's certain things you want to know about the topic at hand, practice. The best thing we can do for ourselves is practice. Watch yourself ask the questions. Just get on cold and do your presentation and listen to how many of the hedging phrases you use. Listen to how many of the softening phrases you use. See how many times you're trying to put your idea forward, but you're asking more questions rather than making statements. And practice. This is one way where we might all be tired of being on Zoom calls, but if you're on by yourself, this is one way you can absolutely hear and see where you're tripping yourself up. And then it becomes far easier to be aware of it when you're actually speaking in real time. You'll hear it more, you'll know it more. This is all about awareness. All three of these things are just about raising our awareness of when we hit these verbal misfires, these communication misfires, and how do we stop it, right? How do we stop ourselves in that? So I hope this was helpful tonight. I hope it was a little bit fun. One of the reasons I picked these three is because when I thought back about that moment when I was in that meeting and I was presenting my idea, I did all three of these. I did all three of the, listen guys, I have this idea. You might have already thought about this, but, and I pitched my idea. I have no doubt as I pitched my idea, I padded it with a whole bunch of extra. I was doing this research and I was reading this thing and I saw this stuff and then somebody else said this. And all of that was validating why I had this idea, which I then probably posed as a question instead of a statement. But these were the three that stood out to me when I went back and thought about what were my verbal misfires. So I want you to speak more powerfully. I want you to show up in your leadership. And leadership, again, it's not just a title or a role or a salary. It is how we show up in life. So I want you to be able to own your communications and feel like whether you're talking to your boss or your teammate or your kid or your partner or your dog, that you're doing it clearly, that you're doing it with intention and with power and with clarity. So before I sign off tonight, a couple of quick announcements. One is, if you would like for this group, Accelerating Leadership for Professional Women, when I worked with our group last week in the 5-day challenge, we had a worksheet around this. So I'd be happy to share the worksheet with you women in this group. So if you drop the word, the actual word in the chat below, in the comments below, I will send you the worksheet that we did around these verbal misfires. And that actually has 8 of the misfires, I believe, in them, not just the 3 that I talked about tonight. So that's one thing. Drop word in the chat. I'm happy to send you that worksheet. You can read through it and take a look and figure out where else you might be having some verbal misfires that could help you in your communication skills. Second announcement is that this Thursday, the 14th at 7 p.m. is our next masterclass. Masterclass are the free webinars that I host. I do them typically once a month. This month is 5 power moves to lead with confidence and ditch imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that voice in your head that tells you you are a fraud. You can't do this. And once you screw up, everyone will know. It's a very destructive voice, and we all have it to some degree or another. And it says a variety of different things. But sign up for the free masterclass. You should be getting emails about it. There will be promotions dropping in this group on it as well with the link for you to sign up. You can drop 5 in the chat below if you want me to send you the link directly to sign up for the masterclass. But it's Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 4 o'clock Pacific, 6 p.m. Central Time. And I would love to see you guys there. So thank you again for joining me on Training Tuesday. I hope that you are ready to be heard and that you're ready to do the work, what it takes to actually ensure that you communicate powerfully. Have a great night, ladies.